A man's fist crashed into my wife's face. Mid-morning, Texas sun blazing, white shirt, rose bushes, ordinary Tuesday. And the guy throwing the punch wore a black vest with compliance stamped across the back. Emily hadn't gone outside looking for a fight. She'd gone out for weeds. My wife's a teacher, the kind who can grade essays with one hand and stir spaghetti with the other. That morning she was crouched by our rose bed in her usual gardening outfit, white shirt already streaked with soil, hair pulled back, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. Nothing special until she spotted the notice. A neon red slip of paper was taped crooked to our fence, catching the light like a warning flare. Big block letters yelled violation. Fence 2 inches. Too tall. Flag display. Unapproved. Fines escalate in 72 hours. Emily read it twice, lips thinning, then pulled out her phone. "We're not walking into this blind," she muttered. That's her teacher brain and 15 years married to a Navy man both talking. Document first. Argue later. Evidence keeps bullies honest, or at least cornered. That's when they showed up. 2 men in tactical vests strode across our lawn as if they were hitting a breach point overseas instead of St. Augustine grass on Magnolia Drive. The first, Vince, was built like a bar bouncer who'd lost a fight with his zipper. His vest strained across his belly, sweat darkening the fabric. The second, Tony, had muscle without discipline, gym strength, not field strength. A fake badge dangled crooked on his vest, like even the metal wanted no part of the act. "Ma'am, stop recording enforcement action immediately," Vince barked. He was reaching for command presence and landing somewhere between mall cop and drunk karaoke tough guy. Emily didn't even twitch. She's shut down 6th graders with more presence than that. She kept the phone steady, voice cool. "This is my property. You're on camera." That should have been the end of it. A couple of puffed-up contractors backing off once they realized they were being documented. Instead, Tony's jaw tightened. His fist closed. He took 2 long strides and swung. The sound cracked across the cul-de-sac like a gunshot. Emily's head snapped sideways. Her phone flew into the grass, tumbling end over end, screen shattering but still recording. Lens tilted at an angle that caught everything. She staggered, hand flying to her cheek. Red bloomed across pale skin. Blood beaded at the corner of her mouth. She didn't scream, didn't cry. Her eyes just went wide, stunned. As if her brain couldn't connect the words "fence notice" with being punched. The street froze. Curtains fluttered. Mrs. Rodriguez's garden hose went limp, water puddling at her feet. Somewhere a dog started to bark, then cut off mid-howl. You could feel the line being crossed, like a wire snapping. Something in me broke at the same time. 15 years of marriage. 3 combat deployments. I'd never seen Emily hurt like that. The anger that ripped through my chest was white-hot and perfectly cold at the same time. Not flailing rage. The kind of fury that doesn't yell. It decides. The screen door slammed behind me. Just that sound was enough to pull every eye. I didn't wear a uniform anymore. Just an old faded Marine Corps t-shirt, jeans, bare feet on the boards. But posture is its own kind of weapon. Weight centered. Shoulders back. Breathing steady. The air felt heavier. The 2 officers stiffened. The swagger bled out of them like the last of the morning dew. "I'm a Navy SEAL," I said evenly. Not loud. Not bragging. Just fact. "You just assaulted my wife." "Bad decision," Vince sneered. But the smirk didn't match his eyes. Behind them I saw it, doubt. Tony's fists faltered. My voice changed. Not the neighbor voice. The one I'd used overseas. Calm as ice water, hard as steel. The tone that had stopped armed men in their tracks more than once. "Stand down," I said. "Hands where I can see them. Last warning." The words hung in the heat like a drawn blade. Vince chose wrong. He dropped his head and charged. He came at me like a linebacker chasing highlight tape. No technique, no control, just speed and the belief that size equals victory. Pivoted left. Years of drills rewired into instinct. He missed me by a country mile, boots catching on the porch step. His momentum did the rest. His face met the wooden riser with a crack that made my teeth ache. He howled, rolling over, hands to his nose. Blood poured through his fingers, streaking his vest, dripping into the grass. Tony, seeing his partner down, decided fists would succeed where fake authority had failed. He came in swinging sloppy haymakers, telegraphing each punch a full beat before it left his shoulder. I ducked once, twice, then stepped aside. Gravity finished the job his fists couldn't. He toppled, crashing sideways into our sprinkler riser. The jet of water smacked his jaw with a sharp, ugly snap. His groan turned to garbled mush. Consonants and vowels mashed together. Drool mixed with sprinkler spray running down his chin. Both men were on the ground in under 30 seconds. Emily's phone lay in the grass, lens spiderwebbed but still recording. It had caught everything. Tony's punch, Emily's stumble, Vince's charge, the blood, the fall. Digital truth. Emily picked it up, wincing. Her cheek was already swelling, purple shadows surfacing under the skin. Still rolling, she whispered, voice trembling but unbroken. That's my wife. Stronger than most men I've fought beside. Our block was wide awake now. Agnes from across the street peered out from behind her lace curtains, iPad up, recording like it was a lifeline. Carl next door leaned on a wrench, jaw slack. Mrs. Rodriguez stood frozen, watering can tilted midair. What had started as a backyard spat now looked like Exhibit A. Vince groaned, clutching his face. You broke my nose, he whined, voice cracking high, teenage and shocked. His vest zipper finally surrendered and split open, exposing a t-shirt underneath. World's greatest dad. The irony hit harder than my shove. Tony tried to mumble something about me being under arrest, but his ruined jaw turned it into wet nonsense. He looked less like an enforcer and more like a toddler who'd bitten his own tongue. I didn't pose, didn't throw another punch. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. This is Jack Harper at 2147 Magnolia Drive, I said. 2 men just assaulted my wife on private property. Both need medical attention, because that's what adults do, even when idiots play soldier on your front lawn. As I ended the call, something glowed in the grass. Vince's phone. The screen was cracked but still on. A text notification pulsed across it. Boss wants force if needed. J timestamped 2 minutes before Tony hit Emily. Emily leaned closer, camera catching the screen. Her cheek shook, but her eyes sharpened. Got it, she murmured. Sirens began in the distance, growing louder. Neighbors whispered now, voices carrying over manicured hedges. Eyes flicking from the bleeding compliance officers to the phone in my hand. My jaw clenched. Whoever Jay was, this wasn't random. Someone had issued orders. Someone thought using violence over offense was strategy. Emily's fingers brushed mine. That's our first lead, she said quietly. I nodded. For the first time since Tony's fist connected with her face, a cold, controlled smile stretched across mine. This wasn't about fence height anymore. This was war. By the time the sirens hit Magnolia Drive, our street looked less like a subdivision and more like a small, contained battlefield. Vince lay curled in the grass, moaning into his bloody vest. Tony sat propped against the sprinkler post, jaw hanging crooked, words drooling out as water arced in glittering streams behind him. Emily stood steady, one side of her face swollen and red, phone still capturing everything. More neighbors had drifted out. Some filmed, some whispered. No one stepped forward to help the guys in vests. Nobody sides with men who punch teachers in their own yards. Then I heard the voice I'd been waiting for. Jesus, Jack. What the hell happened? Ray Delgado, 2 houses down, retired in cargo shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, walked across the grass. He still shook hands like a cop. Firm, measuring, eyes already taking inventory. 25 years on the force before HOA politics ever touched his life. He took one look at Emily's face, then at the 2 men on the ground. He snorted. These clowns left more evidence than a drunk bank robber. I handed him Vince's phone. The text was still on screen. Boss wants force if needed. J. Ray gave a low whistle. You've got a smoking gun here. The paramedics rolled up first, strapping Vince to a stretcher while he yelped about his nose. Tony tried to bat them away, but his jaw betrayed him. Their black tactical vests looked ridiculous against crisp white ambulance sheets. Then the cruisers arrived. Real badges this time. Red and blue washed over tidy lawns like war paint. The officers climbed out, took one look at Emily's face, and I saw their expressions harden. Assault was obvious. The fake patches on Vince's and Tony's vests made it worse. Impersonating officers. Private muscle pretending to be something they weren't. They took statements. Watched Emily's video twice, slow and careful. I handed over Vince's phone with the text from Jay. The cops exchanged looks that said they'd seen HOA squabbles, but never anything like this. Ray leaned in close, keeping his voice low. "See those patches?" he murmured. "Community compliance group. I've butted heads with them before. They're private contractors. No real authority. Just hired muscle." "Hired by who?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Jennifer Allen," he said. "HOA president." The name landed like a brick. Jennifer Allen, queen of our little HOA kingdom. She'd been slapping violation notices on fences and flower beds for months, ruling like a petty monarch with a citation pad. "You're telling me she ordered this?" I asked. Ray shrugged, but his eyes cooled. "Looks that way. And if so, this isn't about fines. This is conspiracy. Maybe worse." Emily slid her hand into mine, squeezing tight despite her injury. "She tracked us," she said softly. "She planned this. That punch wasn't random, Jack." The murmurs around us grew louder, a hive waking up. Agnes, the widow across the street with lace curtains and 47 framed cat photos, lifted her tablet like a shield. "I recorded everything," she said, voice shaking. "If Jennifer thinks she can run this place like a dictatorship, she's wrong." Carl, still holding his wrench, shifted from foot to foot. "Let's just keep the peace," he muttered, then retreated to his garage. But I'd seen the sweat on his brow. Fear. Maybe something else. Eventually, the police loaded Vince and Tony into the ambulance. One officer handed me a card with a case number. "We'll be in touch," he said. "This won't be quick. HOA cases never are." He was wrong about one thing. This wasn't an HOA case anymore. It was a war waged on our front lawn. As the last cruiser rolled away, Ray crossed his arms, eyes locked on Jennifer Allen's house down the street. Curtains drawn. Porch empty. Quiet and fortified like a bunker before shelling. "She won't stop here," Ray muttered. "Trust me. I know that type. She doesn't back off. She doubles down." Emily's bruised cheek brushed my shoulder as she leaned in. "Then we hit back harder," she said. I nodded, feeling the weight of it settle. We weren't just defending a fence line now. We were defending our family, our neighbors, maybe the entire community. And Jennifer Allen had just fired the first real shot. That night, after the ambulances and cruisers were gone and Magnolia Drive sank into an uneasy hush, our doorbell rang. Emily opened it to find Agnes Porter on the porch. Our widowed neighbor looked smaller than usual, swallowed by a cardigan 2 sizes too big. She clutched a manila envelope to her chest like it might explode. Her hands shook, but her jaw was set in a way I'd never seen. "I can't keep this to myself anymore," she whispered. We brought her into the kitchen. She perched on a chair, eyes flicking toward the windows like she expected Jennifer to materialize outside. "I've been helping her," Agnes confessed, voice trembling. "Jennifer. She made me feel important. Said I was her eyes and ears." She swallowed hard, shame drawing lines in her face. She asked who came home late, who had visitors, whose trash cans sat out too long. I thought it was neighborhood gossip. Harmless. She slid the envelope across the table. "Until today." Emily opened it and spread the contents across the table. Dozens of photos of pages from a black composition notebook. Jennifer's notebook. Dates, addresses, dollar amounts. Names I recognized. Notes in careful, looping handwriting. Columns labeled name, violation, amount, leverage. My stomach turned cold. Mrs. Chan, purple mailbox, $500. Recent divorce filing, Rodriguez family, Flag height, plus $300, custody battle ongoing Delgado, barking dog, $75, retired cop, limited income, leverage Mitchell, Carl, deck permit plus late fees, $2,500. Lien filed, high compliance potential. Emily and I exchanged a look. Her bruised cheek made her look like she'd gone 12 rounds and was still standing. She's not managing a neighborhood, Emily said. She's running an intelligence operation. Agnes nodded miserably. She called it her control system, said every community needs pressure points to keep order. She made it sound responsible, but it was always about control. Ray arrived just as we were finishing the first pass. He took one look at the pages, let out a low whistle and dropped into a chair. This isn't HOA management, he said. This is racketeering. She's tracking weaknesses like a mob boss. My fists clenched on the table. And she sent those idiots to hit my wife. Emily rested a hand on my forearm. We have proof now, Jack. Solid proof. Agnes's eyes brimmed. I didn't know she'd go this far. I swear I didn't. But after today, I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet. You did the right thing, I told her, voice soft. Ray wasn't smiling. He tapped one of the photos with his finger. Look at the bottom of this page, he said. Different handwriting, harsher strokes. Phase 2, if legal fails, escalate pressure. GL backup plan ready. Ray's gaze met mine hard. She's not working alone. And whoever GL is, they're already planning the next step. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded deafening. Emily stared at the phrase phase 2 like it was a death sentence. I think she's planning something worse than fines, Agnes whispered. We slid the photos back into the envelope, page by page. Each one felt like another nail in Jennifer Allen's coffin. But one question dug in deep and stayed. If this was phase 2, what the hell was phase 3? The Polk County Courthouse smelled like bleach and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Marble floors turned every footstep into an echo. Wooden benches groaned under the weight of neighbors who'd come to watch. I wore my best navy suit, the same one I'd worn to certain ceremonies overseas. Emily wore her red dress, the one that made her look like a force of nature, not a victim. Ray carried a bulging briefcase, ex-cop gravitas wrapped around an armful of evidence. Jennifer Allen sat at the opposite table beside an attorney who probably billed more per hour than some of our houses cost per month. She didn't look at us, just whispered to her lawyer, scribbled notes, lips curled in a half-smirk like she already knew the ending. Then Carl Mitchell walked in. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd take a seat with the rest of the neighbors or at least slink into the back. Instead, he went straight to Jennifer's side, slid into the front row near her table, and stared at the floor. The gallery murmured. Betrayal has a sound. The sharp inhale when people realize what they thought was solid has cracked. When they called Carl to the stand, his hands shook so hard the bailiff had to steady the Bible. He kept his eyes fixed on some imaginary point at the back of the room, anywhere but on us. Your Honor, he began, voice wavering but rehearsed. Jack Harper threatened me and my family. He swallowed. He said if I didn't stand up for him, he'd give me the same treatment he gave those enforcement officers. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's nails bit into my palm. My kids walk past his house every morning, Carl went on, words tumbling fast. When a Navy SEAL tells you what he can do, you believe him. I couldn't risk my family's safety over $2,500. He shifted, sweating through his shirt. Mrs. Allen offered to clear my fines if I testified truthfully about his threats. I had no choice. He sank back into the chair, wiping his forehead, looking like a man who'd swallowed something toxic and hoped it didn't kill him in front of everyone. The judge frowned, pen scratching across her pad. To anyone who didn't know better, Carl sounded cornered and sincere. Jennifer's smile grew. Ray stayed calm. He rose and asked permission to present new evidence. Judge Martinez nodded. Ray played Emily's phone video from 3 nights earlier, the community meeting before all this exploded. The courtroom speakers crackled. Then Carl's own voice filled the air. Jack Harper showed remarkable restraint, Past Carl said. I've known soldiers. Jack is a good man. I fully support him in this situation. Carl's shoulders sagged in real time. His own words had just gutted his testimony. The gallery broke into whispers and mutters. Heads turned. Fingers pointed. Ray pressed on. He laid out enlarged prints of Agnes's photos. Pages from Jennifer's control system notebook. One entry stood out in bold letters. Mitchell, $2,500 debt, leverage opportunity. Compliance expected. Judge Martinez peered over her glasses. Mr. Mitchell, she said, voice cool. Your testimony today contradicts both this past statement and this written evidence. Were you lying then? Or are you lying now? Carl shattered. The false conviction drained, replaced by something raw and ugly. Tears slid down his face. I'm sorry, he choked. I just couldn't lose my house. My kids. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Jennifer promised to erase the debt if I helped her. I didn't see another way. The mood in the room shifted like a tide. Gasps turned to glares. Aimed not at me, but at Jennifer. This court takes perjury very seriously, the judge said. However, given evidence of coercion, the court may consider leniency if you cooperate fully with the ongoing investigation. Jennifer's lawyer leaned in, whispering fiercely. For the first time, Jennifer's mask slipped. The edges of her smile cracked. As Carl stumbled away from the stand, Judge Martinez turned her gaze on Jennifer. Mrs. Allen, this court now has reason to believe you engaged in intimidation and witness tampering. The gavel cracked like a shot. Emily squeezed my hand. She's losing her grip, she whispered. We've got her cornered. Maybe. But as Jennifer leaned toward Carl while being guided away and hissed something in his ear, he went pale as paper. Ray saw it too. She still has something on him, he murmured. Worse than money. In that moment, I knew this fight was nowhere near finished. The next morning, the air in our kitchen felt thicker than summer humidity. Emily's cheek was still puffed and discolored, but she moved with that stubborn grace teachers have when they refuse to let pain claim their day. I sat at the table with a mug of coffee and a notebook full of license plate numbers I'd started jotting down. Strange cars driving by too slowly, lingering just a little too long. Sunlight slashed through the blinds, striping the paper with bars of light and shadow. To fit the mood. Neighbors? No. We felt more like inmates under watch in Jennifer Allen's suburban prison. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just one line. Your wife works at that school, right? Public places can get unpredictable. A friend, the coffee in my gut went icy. Emily read it over my shoulder. Her face went white, then flushed with anger. They're threatening my school, she said. My students. Her thumb was already moving, screenshotting, saving, backing up. Teacher reflex. Evidence first, emotions later. Her hands shook anyway. I'd seen that look overseas. The look on civilians' faces when they realized they'd been marked. Ray showed up 10 minutes later, still in a Hawaiian shirt but with his old badge case clipped instinctively at his belt. He read the text. His jaw set. This isn't HOA crap anymore, he said. This is federal. Threatening a school brings the feds to the table. Emily's voice cracked. The teacher inside finally gave way to the terrified wife. They've been watching me, Jack. My schedule. My class. Who knows what else they've tracked. Agnes arrived with another envelope, eyes raw from crying. She spread new prints of Jennifer's notebook photos across the table. This time the handwriting looked more frantic, angrier. One line hit like a blow. Phase 3, target public institutions. Maximum pressure. Emily pressed a hand to her mouth. She's moving on to kids, she whispered. To the school. Agnes sobbed. I never thought she'd go that far. I thought she just wanted perfect lawns and matching fences. But this is evil. Ray dialed one of his old contacts in law enforcement. His voice went clipped, efficient. Got a situation, he said. Suburban HOA president escalating to terroristic threats. Ties to an elementary school. We need digital forensics ASAP. When he hung up, his expression was grim. She's not bluffing, Jack. People like her don't make empty threats. They keep pushing until someone stops them. Emily's phone lit up with messages from the school board and other teachers. Parents were already hearing rumors, panic outrunning the facts. If anything happens to those kids, she started. It won't, I cut in. Not while I'm breathing. I meant it, but doubt had already slid in like a blade. Because Jennifer's control system wasn't just gossip on paper anymore. It was full-spectrum intel, names, routines, leverage. If she directed that towards Sunset Elementary, every bell schedule, every unlocked gate, every dismissal pattern was now a weak spot. That night, sleep didn't bother trying. I sat at the front window instead, lights off, watching Jennifer's dark house down the street. Her porch light flicked once around 11, then died, leaving the place looking like a blacked-out bunker. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Phase 3 is live. School security isn't as strong as they think. A friend, Emily, shifted in bed, sensing the tension. What is it? I showed her. Her breath caught. She grabbed my hand so tight it hurt. The war had left our front yard. Now it was heading straight for her classroom. We met at a Denny's off the highway. Neutral ground. Public enough to keep everybody's hands visible. The place smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease soaked into the vinyl. My kind of meeting room. I spotted him as soon as he walked in. Weathered face. Gray stubble. Marine Corps tattoo faded on his forearm. A limp that said combat long before he did. He slid into the booth across from me and gave a small nod. Jack Harper, he said. Voice like gravel. Greg Lamb. Jennifer's ex. The name hit hard. GL backup plan ready. You've been watching? I asked. He sipped coffee, grimaced. 15 years married to her, he said. You learn to track patterns. When I heard what she did to your wife, I couldn't sit back. He pulled a manila folder from his jacket and set it on the table. Then another item, a beat-up smartphone. Everything I've got, he said. Bank statements, phone logs, email printouts, recordings. I flipped through the folder. Lines of transfers from HOA accounts to outfits with names like Community Compliance Group and Legal Intimidation Services. Thousands siphoned from dues into her private enforcement machine. Some transfers came from old joint accounts she'd never closed after the divorce. She told everyone I died in a training accident, Greg said with a bitter half-smile. Easier than admitting she drove me out. He tapped the audio file list on the phone. What she didn't factor in is that I keep records. He pressed play on one of the clips. Jennifer's voice came out slurred but sharp. Drunk, angry, unmistakable. Greg, you bastard. She snapped through the speaker. I'll ruin anyone who reminds me of you. These military types think they're untouchable. I hired those compliance morons to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. She deserved it for filming my operation. Emily's bruised face flashed in my mind. My grip on the table tightened. Greg hit another recording. Carl's weak, Jennifer's voice hissed. Debt makes people useful. Phase 2 worked. Phase 3 breaks them all. Maximum impact. The hairs on my neck rose. This wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. This was a strategist. She called me every month, Greg said. Always drunk. Always threats. 2 years ago, I started recording her. I knew someday she'd go too far. He leaned forward. You've seen what she's willing to do. If we don't stop her, the next headline won't be about an HOA. It'll be about kids. Why now? I asked. Why step in after all this time? He stared out the rain-streaked window at the flickering Denny's sign. Because this morning she texted me, he said. Said school security was weaker than they thought. Said maximum impact was coming. He met my eyes. There was regret there, buried deep. I made the mistake of leaving instead of stopping her, he said quietly. Don't repeat it. He slid a small USB drive across the table. I'm here to help you end this. For good. When I walked back out into the night, that drive felt heavier than any weapon I'd carried. It didn't just hold evidence. It held a declaration. Jennifer Allen wasn't finished. The community center had never been this full. Folding chairs ringed the walls. Neighbors packed in shoulder to shoulder. Nobody was talking about sprinkler schedules or trash can etiquette tonight. This was a war council. Military habit had Emily and me arrive early. Secure the space. Clock the exits. Ray stood by the projector with a stack of notes. Agnes clutched her envelope like scripture. Greg hovered in the back, silent and watchful. When I stepped to the podium, the room settled. Neighbors, I began, voice steady low. This isn't about fence height. It's not about flags. It's about a woman who turned our HOA into her private enforcement arm. You need to see exactly what she's been doing in your name. Emily tapped her phone. The projector flared to life. First up, her video of the assault. Vince and Tony appeared larger than life. Vests, fists, my front steps. The sound of Tony's punch landing on Emily's face cracked through the speakers. Several mothers covered their mouths. A father swore under his breath. Next came Agnes's photos, Jennifer's notebook pages, projected big enough for everyone to recognize names and handwriting. Columns of violations and leverage points. Neighbors leaned forward, squinting, then recoiled as they found themselves. $500 for a purple mailbox? Mrs. Chin shouted. While she was tracking my divorce? The room boiled. Ray took the mic, voice calm, cop steady. Jennifer Allen diverted more than $15,000 of your dues, he said. Payments to sham enforcement outfits, intimidation services, private investigators. That isn't community management. That's organized extortion. Then Greg walked to the front. He didn't take the podium, just set his phone on the table and hit play. Jennifer's drunken voice poured into the mic. I hired those compliance idiots to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. Military types think they're so tough. Everyone breaks when you apply enough pressure. Silence, then an eruption. She assaulted a teacher. She threatened our kids. She stole our money. Mrs. Patterson, the quiet HOA vice president, banged an actual gavel with surprising authority. Order, she shouted. By bylaws, Section 74, I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in President Jennifer Allen. Hands shot up like a volley of fireworks. 52 for removal, Mrs. Patterson called. 1 abstention. She glanced at the confused new guy from Oak Street who barely knew what HOA stood for. And 1 against, she finished as Jennifer raised her own hand, chin high. It's done, Mrs. Patterson said, at least on paper. Jennifer lunged for the microphone, hair askew, eyes blazing. You idiots, she screamed. You think you're safer without me? I built this neighborhood. I kept order. Without me, your property values will tank. Your families will fall apart. You need someone strong enough to make the hard calls. 2 volunteers moved to gently guide her out, but she ripped her arm free and spun back to the crowd. You think removing me stops anything? She hissed. The pitch of her voice dropped, lips pulling into a feral smile. Phase 3 doesn't need HOA authority. I've got resources beyond this little subdivision. Connections you can't even picture. She tilted her head, eyes on me. And it's already in motion. The room descended into panic. Parents clutched kids. Voices overlapped. What if she has people watching the school? My son walks home alone. Do we need armed guards? Ray stepped up and cut through the noise. Listen up, he barked. Full cop mode. Until this is resolved, we act like a unit. Parents with school-age kids coordinate carpools. No child walks home alone. We set up neighborhood watch along school routes and at Sunset Elementary. We treat this like an active threat. Mrs. Patterson's hands shook as she lifted the gavel again. By bylaws, the board must appoint an interim president, she said. I nominate Jack Harper. Hands went up without hesitation this time. Unanimous, she said. Jack Harper is interim HOA president. Agnes Porter, community liaison. Ray Delgado, security coordinator. The crowd applauded, but beneath the clapping ran a deep, cold current of dread, because Jennifer's eyes said one thing clear as any spoken threat. She wasn't bluffing. As the meeting broke up and people spilled into the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Your wife teaches at Sunset Elementary, doesn't she? Kids are so exposed at 3:15 dismissal. A friend, the words glowed against the screen like a lit fuse. Emily read it, her hand clamped around mine. Phase 3 wasn't theoretical. It had a timetable. By the next morning, squad cars were crawling our streets. Ray had pushed every contact he had. Officers knocked on doors, took statements on porches, collected copies of Agnes's photos and Greg's recordings. A detective from the sheriff's office pulled me aside and spoke under his breath. Threats against schools trigger protocols, he said. We're flagging this for the FBI. You'll probably get a call within a day. Word raced faster than the official notices. Parents started yanking their kids from Sunset Elementary before lunch. Minivans and SUVs stacked along the curb hours before the final bell. Teachers stood by the gates, scanning faces, weighing every stranger twice. Emily tried to move through her day like normal, but I saw it hollowing her out. They're supposed to feel safe at school, she said. Now they're watching the doors instead of the whiteboard. That evening, the community center filled again without any official meeting scheduled. Fear alone called people there. Everyone talked over everyone else. Questions, rumors, panic. What if she still has people on the board? What if they're watching the playground? Should we pull our kids out until this is over? Mrs. Patterson banged the gavel, but it barely dulled the noise. Ray stepped up. Until authorities say otherwise, we act like we're under active threat, he said. Parents work in groups. No kid walks or bikes alone. We rotate watch near the school and along the main routes. If you see anything that feels off, you report it. Immediately, murmurs of agreement. I still wide. From the back, Greg spoke up. Jennifer isn't just trying to scare you, he said. This is how she works. She thrives on leverage. When fear stops working, she escalates. I lived with that for 15 years. He gestured to the anxious crowd. This, he said, is exactly what she wants. Dozens of eyes shifted to me. Interim president, husband, vet, the man whose wife had taken the first hit. Phase 3 isn't just about Emily, I said. It's about control through terror. We do not give her what she wants. I scanned them, parents, retirees, young couples paying off their first mortgages. We document everything. We protect each other. And we trust the evidence to do its job in court. For a moment, the panic leveled into resolve. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. Unknown number. Phase 3 is active. School security's softer than they think. Maximum impact hits tomorrow. A friend, Emily, saw it over my shoulder. She gasped. Ray swore. Greg slammed his fist against the table. In that instant, every parent there knew tomorrow wasn't an idea. It was a countdown. The Polk County Courthouse looked like a stage the morning of the hearing. Marble, flags, hard benches, the smell of cleaner and nervous sweat. Every seat full, neighbors jammed shoulder to shoulder. Reporters lined the back row, cameras low but ready. Emily walked beside me in her red dress, the color sharp against the pale bruise that still lingered under her makeup. Ray carried his thick binder. Agnes had her folders of photographs. Greg's jaw was tight, lips pressed into a soldier's straight line. Jennifer entered last. Designer suit, perfect hair, lawyer at her side. She scanned the room with cool contempt, eyes landing on me as if I was an annoying item on her calendar. Then she smiled, like she knew something we didn't. Judge Martinez brought the court to order. This hearing covers allegations including harassment, misuse of HOA funds, intimidation, and threats directed at Sunset Elementary School, she said. Ray testified first. Steady, precise. He laid out the assault video step by step. The jury and gallery winced as Tony's fist connected with Emily's face on the monitors. As she staggered, as her phone flew. Then came Agnes's photos of the notebook. Names and vulnerabilities projected large. Some jurors shifted. One couldn't help a quiet curse. Greg took the stand. I was married to Jennifer Allen for 15 years, he said. Everything you're seeing here, Financial manipulation, coercion, escalation when challenged. That's been her pattern for as long as I've known her. He played the recordings. I hired those compliance idiots to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. Military types think they're so tough. Phase 3 will break them all. Jennifer's lawyer tried to argue the clips were taken out of context. The judge didn't look convinced. Against her attorney's advice, Jennifer insisted on speaking. I did what had to be done, she snapped. I protected property values. Standards. People like Jack Harper think serving in the military puts them above the rules. He's dangerous, violent, unstable. Ray stood for cross. Protecting property values doesn't involve funneling HOA funds to private enforcers, he said. It doesn't involve hiring men who throw punches at a teacher on her own property. And it doesn't involve anonymous threats to a public school. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Before Jennifer could launch another speech, the bailiff approached the bench and handed Judge Martinez a note. She scanned it, face tightening. Mrs. Allen, the judge said slowly, this court has just been informed that the anonymous threats sent to Sunset Elementary have been traced to your personal cell phone. The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, the scrape of chairs as people leaned forward. Jennifer shot to her feet. That's a lie, she cried. Someone planted that. Greg set me up. Greg just shook his head once, tired. The gavel came down hard. Order, the judge said. This court takes terroristic threats extremely seriously. Combined with the evidence we've seen, this confirms a pattern of harassment and endangerment. Whatever composure Jennifer had left fractured. She thrashed against the bailiff's grip, spitting accusations at everyone. Me, Greg, even Agnes. You're all conspiring. You'll regret this. You don't know what I'm capable of. This time, no one flinched. Her voice didn't have power anymore. The evidence did. The verdict came back swift and solid. Guilty on harassment. Guilty on intimidation. Guilty on misuse of funds. Guilty on assault by proxy. Guilty on terroristic threats. The gallery let out a collective breath. Some people clapped. Some just closed their eyes. Jennifer Allen, once untouchable queen of trimmed hedges and matched mailboxes, was now just another defendant being led away in cuffs. But as she passed, she looked back over her shoulder, eyes burning. This isn't over, she hissed. Phase 3 was just the beginning. Despite myself, the words lodged deep. Her designer heels clicked on marble as the bailiff escorted her back in for sentencing. They didn't sound regal now, just hollow. Judge Martinez's voice filled the chamber. Jennifer Allen, you are hereby sentenced to 18 months probation with electronic monitoring, $8,000 in restitution to the Magnolia Drive HOA, 200 hours of community service, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and a lifetime ban from serving in any homeowners association leadership role. This time, the applause was open. Some neighbors cried openly. Agnes sobbed into a handkerchief. A few people whistled. The reporters bolted for the doors, already framing their headlines in their heads. Emily squeezed my hand. It's over, she said, relief softening every muscle. Finally over. Outside on the courthouse steps, it felt like a block party. Parents hugged kids. Agnes clung to Mrs. Patterson like a drowning woman to a life preserver. Carl stood off to the side, shoulders hunched, shame written all over him. He walked up to me, eyes wet. I'm sorry, he said. I let fear get the better of me. If you'll have me, I want to help rebuild what she broke. I studied him, then offered my hand. We start fresh, I said. Together. That night at home, our cul-de-sac glowed like the 4th of July. Grills fired up. Kids raced through sprinklers. Someone strung lights between porches. Laughter rolled down the block, loud and easy for the first time in months. The weight of Jennifer's rule had finally lifted. Later, after most of the food was gone and the kids were dragging themselves home damp and happy, Emily curled into my side on the porch swing. Ray joined us, Hawaiian shirt rustling as he sat. He stared at the darkening street for a moment, then cleared his throat. Jack, he said, there's something you should know. The porch light caught the lines on his face, the honesty, and something heavier. "You remember that school threat message?" he asked. My pulse ticked up. "The one they traced back to Jennifer's phone?" He nodded. "After she sent that Phase 3 text to Greg, I got temporary access to her confiscated device," he said quietly. "I may have forwarded a message from her phone to yours. Made sure there was no wiggle room about intent." Silence dropped between us. Emily's eyes widened. "You mean you faked that one text?" she asked. Ray held up a hand. "Careful with that word," he said. She was escalating. She had already voiced violent intent. All I did was push the narrative straight into the spotlight, so the court couldn't shrug her off as just an overzealous HOA president. I leaned back, studying him. Every cop I'd ever worked with overseas had a line they wouldn't cross and a line they'd pretend not to see. This sat somewhere between. "So justice was engineered," Emily said softly. "Justice was protected," Ray replied. "She ran a private intimidation ring. She ordered men to hit your wife. She weaponized personal data. I made damn sure the system took that seriously." I held his gaze for a long beat, then felt the corner of my mouth twitch into a wry smile. "Remind me not to get on your bad side," I said. He chuckled, tension easing. "Fair." On the lawn, Agnes laughed with a group of neighbors. Real friends, not the counterfeit power Jennifer had offered her. Carl helped string lanterns across 2 porches, working like a man desperate to earn back trust. For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe this place might actually heal. Still, Jennifer's last words scratched at the back of my mind. Phase 3 was just the beginning. Maybe it had been bluster. Maybe not. Either way, one truth settled in. She was gone. We were free. And if anything like her ever came back, we'd be ready. Some neighborhoods don't shatter under pressure. They harden. Jennifer Allen's house went dark and quiet for weeks. The lawn turned patchy. Weeds pushed through the flower beds she'd once obsessed over. The mailbox listed at an angle. And for the first time in years, nobody found a violation slip in their mailbox. A for sale sign went up almost immediately. Offer pending followed before the week was out. In the meantime, the neighborhood began to look like itself again. We had block parties without someone measuring fence lines. Kids played tag until sunset without glancing anxiously up the street. Agnes baked cookies and passed them down the block. Carl, dragging the weight of what he'd done, volunteered for every cleanup day, every committee. Emily's bruise faded, but the fire behind her eyes didn't. She started a parent safety group at Sunset Elementary. Pickup and drop-off became tight operations, lists, rotations, no kid walking home alone. Ray called it the best damn neighborhood watch this county's seen. One evening, as I stood at the grill flipping burgers, I watched neighbors talking under string lights, kids shrieking in sprinklers, music drifting from a Bluetooth speaker. Finally felt like home again. Emily leaned against me. "Think we'll ever get back to normal?" she asked. "Real normal. Complaints about barking dogs and ugly garden gnomes instead of all this." "Maybe," I said, kissing her forehead. "At least next time the fights will be honest, not psychological warfare." We both laughed. For a moment, the past months felt like a nightmare we'd finally woken from. Peace never lasts forever. 2 weeks later, a moving truck backed into Jennifer's old driveway. I stood at the curb and watched. The new couple didn't arrive with couches and houseplants. They arrived with equipment. Security cameras, satellite dishes, tall metal cases with padlocks. Heavy enough 2 movers struggled with each one. Black plastic tubs stacked 3 high. The man wore mirrored sunglasses despite the fading light. The woman snapped orders at the movers, voice sharp, efficient. On the back of their pickup, a bumper sticker caught my eye. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Emily stepped up beside me, teacher instincts prickling. "They're not just moving in," she said. "They're fortifying." Across the street, Ray lowered his newspaper and studied the gear. "That's not basic home security," he said. "That's surveillance. Serious surveillance." Agnes hovered at her gate, wringing her hands. "Do you think Jennifer sent them?" she whispered. I didn't answer, but a familiar current ran under my skin. The same feeling I'd had in certain valleys overseas, looking at a quiet ridgeline and knowing it hid something ugly. At dusk, red recording lights blinked on across the new porch. Tiny, steady dots in the dark. Watching, waiting. Emily slipped her hand into mine. "What if Phase 3 didn't end with Jennifer?" she asked quietly. I stared at the glowing camera lenses, the black rectangles stacked in the garage, the silhouettes moving behind drawn curtains. She was right to ask. Some wars don't end. They just change uniforms.